This is Jonathan Lane from Fan Film Factor, and today I am here with Paul Jenkins, the fellow who is co-writing and directing the AXANAR sequel fan films. Paul is also credited by many as the person who saved Marvel Comics from bankruptcy back in the 1990s by creating the Marvel Knights series and, of course, doing the legendary Wolverine Origins. Right now, Paul is also the co-founder and chief creative officer of META Studios in Atlanta, Georgia, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But right now, Paul, let me just welcome you back to Fan Film Factor for your second recorded interview.
Yeah, happy to be here, Jonathan. I've got lots to talk about.
Oh, yes. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is just I want to say something. Paul is awesome. And I say this because some of you guys know that back in December, I got a call from Paul. The Interlude team inadvertently destroyed, ruined, whatever you want to say, his 100-foot-long green screen. And it was an accident. I mean, some people have said there was incompetence involved. It wasn't incompetence. It was just a number of people trying to do things very, very quickly to get something available and to make something happen. And, yes, some mistakes were made, but, you know, look, accidents happen. But unfortunately, Paul came to the AXANAR shoot to discover that his $4,700 green screen was unusable and called me up. And obviously, in that moment, I could have tried to throw somebody under the bus, or I, could have tried to cover my ass in some way. But obviously, this thing had to be fixed, or in this case, replaced. And, I acknowledge that. And to Paul's credit, what he said to me, and I will never forget this, is he said, just imagine that I spent the last 5 minutes yelling at you. And I really appreciated that. And I think it says so much about you as a person, Paul, that you were able to go there immediately, that the two of us together were like, okay, this is the situation. We can't change anything now. How do we proceed forward? How do we fix it? And I really appreciated the fact that you didn't spend 5 minutes or 10 minutes or half an hour ripping me a new one. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, I think the thing, Jonathan, about that is people that know me quite well know that I actually don't really do anger very much at all. I don't see the point. I think anger is generally a choice that we make. Most people disagree with me and get very angry about that statement. But I've found it stands me in good stead. We can already know that it wasn't the best situation. The green screen got smashed up. And so let's pretend that we were already angry and there's lots of hurt feelings and we've had a knockdown, drag-out fight. We're there. Okay, fine. Now let's go solve it. Because in productions, in life, we're better off solving a problem than trying to kind of go over 50 times, rehash it. I actually do want to say something, which is the destruction of that green screen. It's a very difficult sort of situation. It was basically a little bit of an experience in there with a couple of perhaps volunteers, and somebody, may have had access to it. They kind of moved it around a little bit. It got stuff on it that we couldn't really do anything about. There was some stuff on the floor, some oil, some petrol or bleach or something. It got into the screen, it discolored it. But in terms of the folks making, especially Josh and Victoria, that really wasn't their inexperience that damaged that green screen. So I don't know if anyone is saying that. That has nothing to do with it. Josh and Victoria were doing great. They were doing really good work, and they were working very hard on their project. Someone had pulled up a green screen for them, which they probably as directors would have expected, But unfortunately, the way it was handled damaged the green screen really badly. So that's just one of those things, right? Last thing I'll say is that we look at productions, and you'll hear me say this when we go to production sometimes. There are mistakes that get made on a production. So there are small ones. The small ones are someone's feeling gets hurt. The medium ones are, hey, this cost us a bit of money. The large ones are, oh no, this cost us a lot of money and we've lost half a day of production. And the tragic ones are the things that happened in Georgia, a few years ago. A young girl, Sarah Jones, was killed on a train track because the people making the film decided they wanted a shot that they did not have permission to get, and so they pulled the entire crew onto a train track. And Sarah was unable to get away from the train as it came, and she died. And so what we try to say to people all the time is be aware, be careful. Mistakes get made. Let's try to make sure that they are small mistakes as possible. And remember that a small mistake should never escalate into a tragic mistake. But it's an acknowledgement, honestly, that mistakes happen. And in this particular case, we were a bit frustrated to find that we had left the green screen there for a future shoot and it was destroyed. But there's nothing I could do about it. And there's nothing that could have been done at this point except we really appreciate you. I really appreciate the fact that your conversation with me was so calm and that we said you took full responsibility, said, okay, let's fix it, and we fixed it. And a big thank you to anyone that helped you take care of that, anyone that sort of helped send in a little extra money or something like that to help pay for it.
Yeah, I actually need to mention that was amazing. Mm-hmm. I did not have $4,700 to fix it, and I put in $500 myself, and I talked to some of my biggest donors, and 3 of them were able to match me, which brought us to $2,000, but we still were $2,700 short. And I went to my donors, and I went to Facebook, and I basically said, please help. I need a Christmas miracle. There was just no other way to get to $4,700. Some people suggested, taking out a second mortgage on my house. If I could have done that, I would have done that to fund the fan film. But anyway, what I just did is I said, look, this happened. I did not throw anybody under the bus. I haven't named any names, not Josh, not Victoria, not anybody who was on this shoot, because as far as I'm concerned, this is no one person's fault. The team screwed up, and I'm the leader of the team, and, I'm going to try as hard as I can to get this thing fixed, and I need some help. And less than a week later, we had raised $4,700, and you've now been paid. And I thought I'd be crowdfunding this for 3 months. The fact that we reached $4,700 in a week it's left me speechless. I mean, I'm so touched. I'm so warmed of heart that the fans came together for this. And with very, very few exceptions, everyone was totally supportive. They all said, look, accidents happen. We appreciate you trying to fix it and, taking responsibility, and we're happy to help. And a few people were trying to be detractors. But for the most part, I'd say 99% of the feedback I got was just so heartwarming and inspirational. And so I am personally thanking, again, everybody who threw in a little extra money.
I'd say one last thing, Jonathan. I'm a little Buddha. I tend to I'm not big on anger. I don't think blame is that helpful unless we can just look out, what happened, and then let's try not to do that twice. That's generally the value of blame. But there's no one that we blamed. We were mildly grumpy for about 5 minutes when I realized, oh no, we just lost an entire green screen. That's generally not your best afternoon. Actually, it happened on my birthday, so I spent my entire birthday trying to solve it. It was one of those things.
Happy birthday, Paul.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So, we had that moment, but the fact is, I like to think of these things as, because, we have to make things, right? We're in production all the time. I'm working on about 3 different projects right now. I've got a big one coming up. And so I think that as a director, and we might actually have a very specific conversation about this in a minute, to do with AXANAR and its production. I know that the best way to approach a problem is to look at it as an opportunity. Because if you just look at it as a problem, you're kind of screwed just with that approach. It's very difficult to have too many problems on your plate. But if you can turn a problem into an opportunity, and I don't mean it in some new age way, I just mean it in practical terms. So this was a problem, and I think what it became was quite a positive thing. Look at the love from the fans, look at their support of you as a production, look at their forgiveness. Oh wow, people make mistakes. We don't know who made this mistake. It could have been any number of people, including just a group of volunteers. Hey, there's one there, let's go get it, right? That's not the worst mistake in the world, but it was a kind of an expensive one. But the problem became an opportunity. Look at the fan community coming together. It's an opportunity to learn how to handle a green screen in the future, how not to do these things that damage stuff, how production works. And so that's what I've seen out of it, which is this is an opportunity that we've had. I suppose everybody has had an opportunity to understand more about production, and that's the way that we'll approach it from now.
Yeah, in fact, Alec was telling me that on your shoot the first weekend of December, where you'd brought another green screen in to use instead for some of that footage is on Sunday they were preparing for AXANAR, and the green screen was still up. And Alex said, okay, we really need to take the green screen down and fold it and put it away. And somebody said, we also are kind of running a little bit late here. Why don't we leave it up? We'll put it away later. And Alex just looked at that person and said, no, we are folding it up now and putting it away. So, yes, I mean, lessons were definitely learned by a lot of people. And sometimes you don't know what you don't know until you realize you don't know it.
So one of the things would be you don't fold them up, you roll them up. Because if you fold them, you get creases in them. But anyway, that's kind of the point.
That's true. You roll it up. You don't fold it. Yes. But so many things are being learned. And I was talking to Alec after all this that, Aries Studios should, because it doesn't have it yet, is to issue a set of guideline do and don'ts for all of the kids that are coming in to use the studio, because there's a lot of the high schoolers in the Gwinnett County School District who are going to be using, and have already been using, Aries Studios to, film their student films, which is a great opportunity for them, but to make sure that they and their teachers know what is and isn't allowed. Like, you don't bring any food or water onto the set. Right. You leave everything in the same condition that you found it. You clean, you vacuum, whatever the rules are. If there's something that you don't know if you can use or not, ask the studio manager before you use it. All of these things are going to be written up in, a very easy guide of, the checklist of what you can and can't do. But up until things started going wrong, Alec didn't even know what to put in that list. I mean, he knew some of the stuff, but like everything that goes wrong is another item in that handout.
Right. So there's your opportunity, right?
Yeah.
Which is to use this knowledge to teach younger people how to do it better, and that's very much what Meta Studios is about. We're very much about it, and we love it, right? We love it, and we're very excited, and we're very happy to bring that knowledge to people. What's the best way to approach it, right? Our way of approaching it is to say, hey, we're learning every day. Everyone's learning every day. If you think that you've arrived creative, if anyone ever says to me, I've arrived, they're correct. They've arrived. It's as far as they can go. That's literally how we think about it. And so we try very, very hard not to get in the way of young people learning. We want to learn all the time, and this is something that became a learning experience. And I think those things, the values and production values kind of move forward always. And so, we learn from this kind of situation, or at least if we don't learn something, which we already knew this, or at least it reinforces the things that we know. And one of the big things that we know about production is you need to try to minimize your mistakes, which is why we try to get people to concentrate at the end of the day, for example. Hey, we're getting near the end of the day. Make sure you still concentrate so that you don't make a mistake and suddenly an Arri Alexa camera is flying across the set and broke. Concentrate. Bring your best stuff.
Yeah, because these are long, long days. I didn't realize until we started doing it that, you get there before 8 o'clock in the morning and you're still going at 10 at night, and that's a short day.
I have an anecdote from the AXANAR shoot, which I guess we should get into in a minute, when we start talking about AXANAR. That is very pertinent to this, about, where you take responsibility. So if you don't mind, I'm going to kind of start us there, because I think it's a fun and interesting anecdote for all.
Oh, please, go ahead. Interview yourself. I'll just listen.
Yeah, sorry about that. Hey, Paul, how do you think about this? So one of the challenges that we had, we had super long days back in October when we were shooting. And, we were very prepped. We always are. Our producer, Scott Conley, is incredible. He knows everything that he's supposed to know. He's really great at what he does. And you can sort of turn around at any moment. And Scott's over there under a single light, like writing checks and making sure people are doing things. And then we have another incredible producer, Chris Mills. Chris basically, organized all the people, got the staff, between the two of those guys, this was a pretty good production. And, we ran into an issue where one of the actors was having a really rough time with what they were working on. Now, this is just one of those things that can happen. And unfortunately, that particular person was having a bit of a rough time because of a complete lack of sleep. They were losing a family member. Someone was passing away as we did the shoot. It was very rough on them. And we got to the end of their stuff, and I'm not so sure they were very pleased with their own performance. That person came to me and said, yeah, wow, that was a challenge. I'm really sorry. It wasn't my best work. And two things came out of that. Actually, we've rescheduled that person to come back in and just redo it. Like, who cares? I don't mind. Just do a pickup. We'll get it. But the second thing was that we went home after that day. And so myself and Scott Conley, the producer, and Jenna Cannell, who's our first AD, would always go home from the set and have a quick drink before we went to our separate ways to talk about our day and to find out what we needed to do tomorrow and how things had gone. We sat down, and Jenna and Scott understandably said, wow, that was rough. We have to, see what we can do. And I said, guys, that's my problem. It's not the actor's problem particularly. My job is to protect the actors. It's my problem to solve. So as much as we may look at where did this come from, why did it happen, it doesn't matter. The camera and the finished product don't show you that an actor had a rough time or this. All they show you is what they show you. So I had to solve it. And I got home that morning about 2 o'clock in the morning, and I realized the way to solve this is to write for safety that person's lines for some of the new characters that were coming in the next day. Give those lines to those people as well to give them an opportunity to at least deliver them so that we were safe with those lines in case we had nothing to edit from. I did. I fell asleep at 4:30 in the morning and found cat typing on my computer about half an hour later when I woke up for the day, right? 5 o'clock in the morning, it's like, I've got to get up again. I've had my half an hour sleep. I am exhausted, but I have solved that problem. I've written the stuff. I've made it ready. We go in, we shoot the other actors, we give them that person's lines just for safety. And then the other person who was having a bit of a tougher time with the delivery of their work agreed, oh, yeah, I'm just going to come back and reshoot that. I wasn't happy with it. I had a bit of a rough time. So if I take responsibility for that, for the actor, for our producers, as a leader or a director, if I can do that, it helps everybody have confidence that we're always going to get it done, bottom line. And that's kind of what we like to try to teach people. Have the bottom line understanding that the project and the camera, they don't care about what you put in personally. All they care about is your finished product. So I'm not the boss. You're not the boss. He's not the boss. She's not the boss. The boss is what we make. And that was a good anecdote to kind of explain how it can go badly, but if you take responsibility for it, you can solve it in a minute,
Yeah, and in fact, I remember when I talked to you in November when we were having our interlude shoot, and you popped on by. Paul and I had a very nice, I think it was like a 45-minute conversation in the middle of shooting, which honestly, I so appreciated you just taking some time out to chat with me because, first of all, you're an amazingly cool guy, but, also you're so knowledgeable, and I was just, such a newbie. I'm still a newbie, but I'm much less of a newbie thanks to, input I'm getting from you and from other people. But you took this time to chat with me. And one of the things that you said is, you're not the boss of this, John. Victoria's not the boss. Josh is not the boss. You know who the boss is? It's the finished product. And I thought that was a very interesting way of putting all this. But that's an amazing philosophy of that, until you're all done with the film is the most important thing. Everybody involved might have egos, but every single one of those egos has to be subservient to getting the project done. And I thought that's an amazingly good philosophy.
Well, check your egos at the door, right? There's a hierarchy. There are protocols, so the directors do this, the producers do this, everyone has their function and everyone should be respected within their function. One of the things you may have seen or may sort of know about is that we're like the fun company, Meta Studios. We love positivity. So when I'm on set, I'll find everybody from the volunteers, crafty, script supervisor, first AD. I will thank everybody genuinely for being part of our project because we know that everyone has their function and everyone is working hard. And so, it's a very collaborative environment. But there's a hierarchy, right? If I'm a director, I need things. I have to ask for these things. We have to do them. That's part of the way that those projects are made. And so people shouldn't really be sort of scrunching their nose up and saying, well, why does he need that? The answer is because. Shut up. He needs it. It's just one of the things. If you want me to spend 45 minutes explaining to you why I did it so that you can, at the end of 45 minutes, say, oh, right, got it, I get it, we've wasted 45 minutes. So it doesn't kind of work like that. Not everyone is in the center of all of these pieces. But everyone has a massively important function, from making sure that we're pulling focus on a shot or any of those things. Everyone has their job. And, we love the fact that Meta Studios is much more of a collaborative environment, and it's built into the structure of our name. Meta is sort of an abstract overview of things, but it's an acronym that means media, education, technology, and advancement. And this whole education and advancement side of it is what we're really passionate about. So it's what we bring to our project.
Well, let's take a quick detour. I mean, obviously we're going to get back to AXANAR because that's what everybody came here for. But I'm kind of curious about Meta Studios, what it is you offer. So here I am. I'm a fan filmmaker. There's a lot of other fan filmmakers, I'm sure, that are listening to this interview right now. Is Meta Studios some kind of a resource that they can use? And if so, in what way?
The particular reason why AXANAR is using Meta as a resource especially is that, I met Alec, and we've spoken about this in the past. I met Alec. I was introduced by a mutual acquaintance. We hit it off. I really liked the fact that he had done what a producer is supposed to do, produce something. So here was a blank piece of paper and an idea that was run around in Alec's head. Next thing you know, by hook up a crick, no matter how hard or difficult and how many eggs were broken, he had Prelude to AXANAR. And it was a thing, and it was shown at San Diego, and it had loads of views. And, Meta came in because of that introduction, and Alec and I hit it off, and said, okay, cool, we're in. Okay, I'm in directing. We brought Scott in to produce. We've got our people involved in things like maybe helping sort of promote it a little bit on our social media channels once we get up and running. So what we do is we sometimes offer consulting services for people. It could be management stuff. It could be helping people learn what they're doing. We will always volunteer our time to help people. But obviously we can't volunteer to help every single fan film to do everything that they want. There's no way for us to do that. We've got other things to do. Like we've got a big project going on right now and a really big one coming up that may run across all of Asia. So it's very hard for us to find the time to specifically help. But we do love the idea that people can get in touch with us and have us come in and consult. We can consult with business management and all of that to help them tell their story better, because that's a big thing for us, is how to help people learn their own story and how to tell it better. We have a section of us that's like a corporate gig where we come in and consult that way. But in terms of fan film people, I suppose my answer would be, reach out. If we can give you some advice, we're happy to spend a few minutes on the phone with you to help you solve a problem or something. And if you really want to hire us, if you can, we're happy to come in and help you do what you need to do.
I mean, what kind of rates do you charge when you consult? I mean, obviously not all fan films can, afford, full consulting services, where I'm sure if you're offering just a few minutes on the phone without charging them, they'd be happy to, utilize that. But if they did want to take the next step, what are they looking for in terms of, paying a fee?
Yeah, I think it would be tailored to the person. Generally, obviously, with corporate work, it's much more expensive. But with a fan film, we would just basically, we'd sort of like pay as you can sort of thing. We probably work something out with them and just help them out to help them fit in their budget. We understand that they got to fit in their budget. And again, we are very caring about creators. It's what is in my DNA as a creator from the moment I started working in this business. Because I started with the Ninja Turtles. I started with Kevin Eastman's publishing company, Tundra Publishing. So we went from Mirage Ninja Turtles to Tundra, and that was literally where we wrote the Creators' Bill of Rights, and we did it for the benefit of creators. So I've always been that way.
Yeah, and I've heard about the Creators' Bill of Rights, but I wasn't really sure what it is. What are the rights and how is it employed?
I don't remember it all. I don't remember exactly how it was all written out, but I will say that the general gist of the Creators' Bill of Rights was at the time creators were basically employees of big corporations. You're talking about in comics, you're talking about Marvel and DC and so on. Yeah. And at the time, creators were just disposable and always really will be to those big corporations. And so you might have a creator that had done all this stuff, that had helped build things, and they were gone. So I know that we paved the way for like Image Comics and those guys to leave Marvel, like Todd McFarlane and all the other guys that left. Because they saw that what they could have was a piece of the action, and it's only fair. If you're a creator, why should you not get some of this piece of the action? Why does every single penny have to flow uphill to the corporation? It shouldn't be that way. I don't believe it should ever continue. It's nothing to do with communism. It's nothing to do with anything other than there is a ton of value in creators, and we should acknowledge that so that creators can continue to create. One last thing I'll say as an aside, it's why I'm really not fond of people when they steal stuff online. I'm sure that everyone does it or something, I don't know. But it's really important to be principled about that kind of thing because there's no economy in it. There was this one time I was working on a very, very big video game, and one of the younger guys who was working with me on this big game, I sat down with him later in the evening. We were chatting about this, that, or the other, and he said, "Oh, I can get you a load of stuff for free." And I thought, hang on a minute. You get paid by a corporation to make a big video game, and that corporation can't afford for this game to be stolen, and in fact, they've had terrible issues with pirating. You get paid by that company, and yet you're willing to pirate stuff. I just don't understand the economy of that. It doesn't make any sense. So I really am a big person who supports creators, and I want them to benefit, and I believe that they are the true blood. It's not the intellectual property. It's the creators that make these things work.
So if anybody did want to contact you through Meta Studios, where would they do it? What's your presence online?
Yeah, so we have an Instagram. I believe it's Meta Studios ATL on Instagram. We have a Facebook page. You can always come by our website, which is metastudios.com. And I think the email addresses to write to are up there on the site. But we're easy to connect with. And I suppose at this point, if someone gets really desperate and they still can't find out how to do it, they can always contact us via you.
Yeah, that's true. Contact me at fanfilmfactor.com, and I can put you in touch with Paul. But he's been very, very helpful, at least to me, obviously. And I know that he's obviously been helpful to Alec in a lot of ways. And so let's transition back to that. When you first came onto the AXANAR project, which was late 2017?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so you've been on this for, pretty much 2 years. But when you first came on board, Alec talked you into it. You decided to come on board. What was the first thing that happened? What was your process of sort of getting into AXANAR?
Yeah, there were two things. One of them was an intellectual agreement that I had with Alec about how I would conduct myself and what I thought was best for the project. And this is just as human beings, And the second was that Alec and I talked for quite a while. I said, Alec, I'm not sure where you've been with other collaborators, other people. I know you've been through a couple of people. I know that there seems to be some antipathy, and I get it. But I looked at the script that he'd written. This is the full script, the one that was originally intended to be made. And I said, there's a lot there, man. There's a lot of really good action sequences. It's fun. It's exciting. There's some great stuff. I'm not going to come in and just completely redo something. But I would like to pitch to you that the whole point of having me involved initially as a writer would be that I have a modicum of expertise in dialogue and character. It's always what I've been known for. It's what really helped us at Marvel, and it really helped redefine the way that their characters are being done, because at the point that I came into Marvel, they were just, hey, let's slap Spider-Man in the game, and people will come because it says Spider-Man on it, and that's never true, Jonathan. Never true. No one cares about Spider-Man unless it's made properly. It's really interesting. So Alec and I agreed to that. I came in, I worked on the 2 15-minute episodes, which I believe were the settlement between Alec and CBS. And then when I came in and did the work, I pitched Alec on a few things. I think there were some things that I certainly thought I could bring. One of them was, hey man, when I read these characters, I understand that it's going through what you'd already been through with Prelude, but I think we're missing the personal reason. Why would this guy, Captain Garth, why would people follow him to the ends of the earth? He's not special because he won a battle. Sorry, that doesn't make you special. It means that you won. You had bigger ships, or you fired your bullets a little quicker than the other person did. That's not special. So we looked a lot about why would the characters be special? What makes them interesting? And I talked to him about my theories on PTSD and survivors of war and war documentaries and all of that. And we really hit it off creatively. And then he trusted me to go into the scripts. And one of the things that I'm most proud of, I'm not going to do a spoiler. It's going to be something that people will see. I'm really proud of how the third episode, which is the third part of these 15-minute episodes, how that ends. It ends in a way that I really feel would be a very Roddenberry-esque kind of ending. It talks about everything that is the world that Gene Roddenberry had created, and it lays it out, and it kind of demonstrates the love that people have for Star Trek and why fans are so passionate about it. Hopefully, that, we don't know until we've implemented it, but I believe that we really kind of resuscitated it. And then at that point, obviously, Alec and I talked about me coming in as a director. He'd been through a couple of other people. They've had other situations. I know they've had some difficulty. I know Rob Burnett. I've known him, sort of a casual acquaintance for a long time. I know he didn't want to continue with what they were doing. I actually chatted with Rob on the phone when I took over. I kind of chatted with him a little bit about this and that and told him I was planning on doing. So, Rob and I can remain friendly. Nothing that I do, Jonathan, has any sort of attachment to anything difficult that's happened in the past. We're very much outside of that. It's a thing that we like to say is sort of beneath our radar because we're not interested in anything antagonistic. It doesn't help anybody. But, I came on as director, and then Alec got to see me working with his baby. And I think that after the first shoot, Alec suddenly realized, hang on a minute, these people at Meta Studios care about us. We care about this fan film because we don't do things by half. We finish things. We make them right if we can. So once I came on, it was just a matter of ongoing confidence and trust. It was just a mutually beneficial sort of situation. And then once we got to that certain point, I'm pretty confident that Alec felt as we led into production that he had made a good decision. And once he saw the production and saw how it was run, you could see that moment, I think, on set because, there are stakes I think are quite high for Alec. He has to deliver this film now. He's been talking about it for a while. It's been such a long time. So I'm sure that it was really, really in his stomach. And I know I talked with him about it. He was a little stressed about what will happen as we go back into production and deliver this project. And then I think when he saw how we ran a production and it was run, it's a professionally run production with people doing what they were supposed to do and, stuff on time and there was an additional issue which was coordinating all of the volunteers. There were lots of people milling around the set. Those people were awesome, by the way. They were wonderful and sweet, and that's why I really love this community. I mean, I'm certainly growing to love this community because the fans are really passionate, and they're really passionate in a really cool way. And they may disagree about things at times, but ultimately it's always passion, and I think that's cool. So we finished this production, and I think Alex sort of took me to one side, and he kind of gave me a bit of a hug and said, "Man, I'm so glad. Thank you, for being a pro, and thank you for caring about what we're trying to do, and thanks for just being cool at what you do."
Before this interview, you told me that you didn't really want to spend too much time talking about the detractors if we could avoid it, and I'm going to honor that. But, I do have to mention the elephant in the living room, which is that one of the main detractor talking points is that Alec Peters is impossible to work with, and everybody refuses to work with him, and everybody walks away from his productions. And obviously you've been with him now for 2 years. You haven't walked away yet. You seem to be pretty committed to him and to this project. Where do you feel that disconnect comes from? That, people's perception of Alec just seems to be different than, other people's perceptions of Alec.
It's an interesting one. So let me sort of address, how I genuinely feel about some of the detractors and difficulties that they've had. We respect everybody, and that means including the people who are very angry with Alec and have had lots of questions. When I came on board, one of the things I did, I spoke to a number of those folks, actually. I actually called up a few of them, not just Rob, because I know Rob and Alec had an issue. But I spoke to a couple of the people directly, and I said, I know that you are frustrated and angry with Alec, and that's going to be your thing. You have every right to be so if this is the way that you guys want to be. Your disagreement, in my opinion, comes about because of passion. So when you've got people who are staunch detractors of Alec, my answer to them would be, you have every right to have an opinion like that if you want. I don't think it's as accurate as you would wish, but people are fighting preconceived notions and long-held notions of what Alec is, and so it's very hard to climb away from that. But I believe very sincerely that a lot of the people who are detractors, I think, you're talking about like the AXA monitor thing, right?
Yeah.
I think that kind of thing really demonstrates that those people are like super passionate about the outcome of Star Trek and what it is and what Roddenberry wanted and what CBS are doing. Like, there's all these people that are like really passionate about it. Well, hey, there are people that are really passionate about like politics nowadays, right? And look at the mess that's become. Like, people who are Republican and or Democrat like won't talk to each other anymore. I think that's a terrible shame, because we're never going to solve any of the problems that we have if we can't open a dialogue. But I genuinely have a respect for people if they have a belief or an understanding of the way the world works. Who am I to tell them that they are completely wrong? As long as you're not mean-spirited, horrible person, right-winger or something, as long as you're not a Nazi, I think it's pretty understandable that those are horrible people, or, pretty unpleasant individuals that have kind of got into the political discourse. I'm not going to make this about politics, but I am going to make this about people. The detractors have a massive passion for this thing, and they love it, and they want Star Trek to be amazing, and they feel that Alec hasn't done any favors for anybody, and that's their opinion, and so they can have that argument with Alec if they want. But it's not necessarily as fully accurate as it should be, and I also think that it's ignoring some things. When we came on, and every time I've spoken to some of those folks, I've said, we, Meta Studios, and me, Paul Jenkins, we're about actually like delivering this for the fans. Like, that's the hugest thing for us. The fans wanted to have AXANAR content. They want it to be finished. They deserve it to be finished. And we are going to do everything we can to help them get that thing. So my relationship personally with Alec notwithstanding, that's what Meta's really focused on, is doing this for the fans and delivering a really cool piece of content because the fans expected it and a lot of people paid for it and all that kind of stuff. As far as my relationship with Alec goes, here's the thing to understand. Alec, for example, has always been really nice to my two boys, right? I've got two kids, and when they see Alec, he always gives them a patch and lets them sit on the bridge and genuinely likes the kids. He's really nice to them. He gave my youngest a really nice prop from a movie that he had, and that was really kind of him. I have no reason to have any issue or concern. Now, the one thing that's funny about Alec is he's kind of a hothead, right? He'll go off, and it really depends on who you are and how you deal with that. When people get a bit heated around me, I tend to be quite quiet and patient, and then when they finish, I say, okay, you finished? And then it's funny, and we move on. So on a couple of occasions, Alec has been a little bit heated because he's so passionate himself. He'll get heated, or he'll yell and scream or carry on or be annoyed and frustrated, and then he does it around me, and he knows that I'm waiting, and he lets off steam, and then I say, all right, anyway, so moving on. And I think Alec genuinely appreciates that that's how it is, and so we haven't had to be antagonistic. What I think Alec gets out of that relationship is I think he finally has a relationship with someone where I'm not really worried about his personal approach to these things. He'd be the first to admit, I get heated, I get pushy. The one thing that I've asked Alec, and he's agreed, I've asked him recently, hey man, now that we're attached to this professionally, what I would really ask of you, please, is can we avoid the online interactions that have this big negative thing? My whole agreement when I came on board this thing was, if Meta's going to be on, this is going to be a force for good. It's going to be a positive addition to the Star Trek universe. We're going to finish AXANAR. We're going to put out positive content, and I would appreciate, if you don't mind, could you not attach us to arguing online or getting annoyed with someone, if you don't mind, please. And Alec has, for the most part, agreed. He's agreed, and then there's been the occasional lapse, and I'll say, hey, Alec, could you mind just, refocusing there a little bit? I really think we should be the positive force. And he has agreed again. So I don't see anything that hideous with the way things are going with Alec. He's just super passionate, and he's, willing to tell everybody how passionate he is, and every so often Meta kind of comes in as the voice of reason. We're like mum, basically. Hey, dude, great. Anyway, you sip on your lemonade here for a minute and calm down,
Well, I will say, we're having this interview in late December, but I will say that over the past few months, I have noticed a distinct calming, I suppose, of the savage beast that can sometimes be, Alec Peters online, which has been very refreshing to me. I was also put under the same marching orders by Mrs. Lane, who just said, look, at this point, Jonathan, just stop engaging them. And for the most part, I have. And it looks like for the most part, Alec has as well. And if that was your doing, Paul, then literally more power to you.
People often refer to me as the Alec Wrangler, which is quite funny. I'm sure Alec gets a smile out of that. He even agrees. He's sort of like, yeah, man, I kind of get off a little bit sometimes. That's cool.
Yeah, you can't really be the Alec whisperer because you just can't whisper at Alec Peters.
No, you can't. Yeah, because you never get a word in. But I would say, again, we're very genuine about, like, how, I suppose some people might look at that a bit sideways. Why would you be positive about detractors? And the answer is because I have been around fans for 32 years, and they've been passionate. I did the origin of Wolverine, and when that happened, it was this magnified. So many people were so angry about the existence of the origin of Wolverine. You can't tell his origin, you're destroying the character, etc. You'd have people come up at conventions. You sometimes wonder if you should fear for your life. It can get a little touchy in there. And I can see that. I think what I would always encourage you and Alec and anyone who is trying to, is opposed to some extent, to do is to say, when we go them, when we say them and us, there is no them and us. We're all, sort of going around hurtling around this planet on a suicide mission to smash it up, and we all put our trousers on one leg at a time. And so everybody has a right to their opinion. And what I would even say to those folks is, hey, make sure that we're not cruel, make sure that we're kind and that we understand that we don't have the same opinion about things. And at a certain point, I think what we hope to be in Meta is sort of a central focus of that. We like people and we genuinely want people to improve. And so if we can be part of the thing that helps improve the situation, we will. But we're not going to be crusaders, and we're not new age hippies like hugging a tree. We just figure that there's a lot more that can be accomplished when everybody agrees on the commonality.
Well, that's a good philosophy. Pretty much I'm just here because I want to see AXANAR finished. A lot of folks have wondered over the years, what keeps John defending Alec. And the fact of the matter is that, what I'm really defending is AXANAR. It's sometimes difficult to separate the two. They're really inextricably intertwined. But, for me, I was drawn initially by AXANAR. I wasn't drawn by Alec Peters. I was drawn by these ships. I was drawn by the story. Even before Prelude to AXANAR started crowdfunding, it just seemed like the coolest thing to explore this time period 20 years before Captain Kirk. This is obviously years before Discovery, so, there was no Star Trek at the time, except for the JJ stuff, and that wasn't our classic Star Trek, and this was, so, that's when I fell in love with AXANAR. And so, everything I've done has just been to, keep AXANAR and the dream of AXANAR alive going forward. And, part of that has taken the shape of defending Alec, because I feel like, as you said, some things are totally justified, that Alec can be a hothead, that's for darn sure. And some things I feel, do need to be defended. I think that some of the stuff that is said about him is unfair, is untrue, is skewed. It is intended to sabotage both him and the project. And I just can't understand trying to sabotage the project. This has the potential to be an amazing fan film. And, even if you don't like Alec, just support the project. You don't have to support him.
Yeah. I wouldn't know what's said about Alec, because I'll be honest with you, we absolutely have nothing to do with any of that side of it, with the detractors or the fight or any of that. We've made it very clear we don't live in that space. We're a company. We've got other things to do. I've got stuff to do anyway. I've got big projects that we're working on and some time drains and things like that. So I can't really get involved in that. But what I can say philosophically is that we care about AXANAR. I agree with you completely. We are here for AXANAR and we are here for the fans. That's our primary driver. But as to my relationship with Alec, there's no issue. There hasn't been any. So, anyone else can have their issue with Alec if they want. It's a free world. It's a free country. Go ahead. I would ask everybody to slow down and think for a moment or be kind to each other, but I can't control if people won't. I just hope that they would. But we're here for the fans. We want to make this project and we believe the fans deserve it. because there was some, the money raised and there was all these problems, whatever happened, we weren't involved with any of that stuff. But I do think it would be nice for the fans to get these really cool films, and so that's what we're aiming for.
Well, on that note, let us transition back into AXANAR production. And at this point, as we're having our conversation, you've had 2 shoots. I think there's another one that's going to be happening in February, and at least 1 or 2 more scheduled after that. So from the director's point of view, Paul, how is everything going?
Yeah, I would say it's going really well. There were some cool things that sort of came through for us. We have a certain bank of visual effects shots that are really cool that we know speak directly to the script. We've been through the main shoot, the difficult one, which was on the bridge. The bridge offers such incredible production value, it's kind of ridiculous. It feels like a candy land to have the opportunity to...
Yeah, that bridge is amazing, folks. I mean, there's just no words that can describe it. It is as amazing as it looks, and even more so.
Yeah, I feel very lucky to be involved with that. But Alec actually had a moment. I think some of the other people who are so familiar with Star Trek had this great moment. We repurposed the bridge to shoot a couple of scenes in engineering. And I think people who hadn't had quite the same experience as we had were worried. Well, wait a minute, what, you're going to do what now? We painted up a couple of pipes and everybody's sort of looking at us sideways. And when they saw it in camera, they realized, oh my God, movie magic. Look at this thing. It looks like engineering, right? So we've been able to use the bridge and the set and to some good effect. We shot some stuff that we think is valuable. We shot a number of the pieces that we would need for the final product, and we got a lot of character stuff out of these interviews and the interactions with the characters involved in the Battle of AXANAR. It's a time process, and I think the bit that I'm always worried about is that now that production has actually really gone back to what we need, and it's a bit spread out because that's just an issue of money raising and being available to do it. It's ever so slightly spread out. But that being said, we are going to deliver a really, really cool film once the money is raised for the finished post. Obviously, it has to be finished through post. We've got the next 2 shoots scheduled. We know how to do them. We've had experience with this material. We feel amazing about the first big shoot. We just did a sort of small pickup shoot here in Atlanta. Last weekend, it was some stuff actually that was aimed towards some of the original donors as well. There's a little piece that we had to shoot, as well as a couple of pickups for Garth that will work with the trailer. We're on schedule. It's just not like a normal production. It's not like we kind of go for 20 days and then break, and then we go into post. We have to do shoots in different parts of the world and at different times. But it seems like the project is on track. I can't speak to anything else. All I know is when I'm told, hey, we're shooting, I don't raise the money. I don't do those things. It's nothing to do with us. We're ready when the money's available to go ahead and bring the best work that we can to try to finish out the project. And it looks healthy now. I would imagine the thing for the fans perhaps is a little bit of weariness. Well, when's it going to be finished? That's because it's taken such a long time. But it's been rebooted. Now it's in production and things are happening with it. So the answer to that would be, I think, sort of middle of this upcoming year, 2020, it would probably be finished and ready for showing at some point right there. And there's a couple of goals of hopefully San Diego or DragonCon or the thing in Vegas, So we're trying to show the thing as soon as we can, but we have to get through the last part of production to do it.
So at this point, do you know how much more has to be raised, or is that an Alec question?
That's an Alec question. We don't really have anything to do with that. We're there and available, but, as to how our production gets funded, especially because it's primarily, obviously Alec's the executive producer on this, and so the money and the fundraising is down to him. We don't really know too much about it. We just know that, this is the challenge, I suppose. We kind of provide a budget, for example. Hey, if we're going to go shoot this last bit in LA, we're trying to keep it really low. We understand that. We're trying not to break the bank on anybody. Here's what we think we can do it for to the quality that we've already done. It's pretty cheap, comparatively. And so Alec has those numbers from us. And really, then there's an additional set of numbers, which I think would be the post numbers. I'm not negotiating with anyone in post. That's really something that Alec would do.
Yeah, because I think there's a number of people out there who, are wondering about all of the money that Alec, raised back in 2014 and 2015, saying, that nothing happened. All this money was raised for AXANAR, and, where is it? And obviously that question has been asked and answered so many times because, obviously there was money spent to build the bridge, there was money spent to lease the studio. There was basically money that never was able to be used for the production because while the lawsuit was going on, the rent had to be paid, insurance had to be paid, utilities had to be paid, and that's just how the money ran out. Yeah, but now it's an entirely, as you said, rebooted production in that now all the money being raised is absolutely positively going towards production and post-production. But, the money is coming in, but it's not necessarily coming in as fast as it did the last time, which potentially could lead to some delays. If Alec doesn't have enough crowdfunding, AXANAR might not be able to come out in 2020. I hope it does. Do you have any recommendations or any advice for Alec if, for whatever reason, the money does not come in, or is it just basically we'll be there to shoot the rest of this when you got the money to pay for it?
To be fair, just kind of accurate, it's mostly the last thing that you said. Yeah, it's kind of like we can do it when we're ready to go. We can't really get blood out of the stone. It's not a question of whether or not we would be involved. It's a question of whether or not the production can pay for this, that, or the other. We need to make sure that we have a camera ready to point in that direction and record audio and all that kind of stuff. And it costs this amount of dollars, and so there's nothing that we can do to particularly change that, right? That being said, we have always told Alec, we're in for the long haul, and so we hope the production doesn't get put off. We think it shouldn't be. I realize the difficulty must be going back to the fans and perhaps trying to redo something that's already been, there's been donations and there's been the stuff, and maybe there's still fulfillment from the original one to go. That must be pretty difficult to overcome. But we can only really speak to what we do now, pertaining to our involvement in the project. We can deliver a good film. We can do the best we can to make it amazing. We are working with Alec and AXANAR Productions or Aries Studios to say, hey, okay, we understand that needs to be as cheap as possible. Sure, we think we can do it for this, and we want to try and deliver the best quality that we can. But I can't really speak to the money that was lost in the things. Those are things that have been, as you say, rehashed, I'm sure, a million times. There's nothing that we can do about that. The only thing that we can do is to point cameras in this direction and work with actors to deliver the content, and then hopefully we can go through post. So we're in the same position as the people in post. There's visual effects people, a VFX supervisor, there's a post-production coordinator, there's sound, and there's music, and there's editing, and all the stuff that has to happen through post. And there's no way for those people to be able to do it unless there's money in the bank to be able to pay for certain things. So the challenge is very much on Alec and the production to raise the money. But our part of it is we're doing the best that we can to even show Alec sometimes how best to spend money. This is the best way of doing it. Here's how we think we can do it quite cheaply. Here's a way in which we can help. Here's how we can save money. Here's a place where we should not save money. Do not try to save money right there. You're going to blow it up if you do, right? So we're helpful with advice, I think, and knowledge on production.
So let me ask you some questions about the actual directing of AXANAR. Now, you've directed before this, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yes, and I looked up on IMDb, and you've got a bunch of stuff there. Now, how long have you been directing films?
So I've been involved with it since about 20 years. I've been involved in films. Obviously, when we had Ninja Turtles, I was the third employee of the Ninja Turtles organization. We used to go down on set. We were making the first Ninja Turtle movies. I was really young. It was fun. I learned everything. But I actually started in college. I studied to be an actor, but very quickly found that I was much better in directing and writing. I enjoyed that side of it much more, and I was better at it. So I trained to do film, and then I came to America and I met the guys that created the Ninja Turtles, and suddenly I was in the comic industry. And then an extension of that became really funny in the mid to late 90s. I suddenly was innovating in game design. So I happen to be a guy that's built across all media. I've directed animation. I just directed some Ninja Turtle stuff for Nickelodeon last year, or a couple of years ago. I have a hand in everything. And so film directing is a natural extension of my training, and it's part of what I love the most. I mean, it's the thing I should always have done, but I'm not exactly going to complain about my career because I've managed to be a creative or narrative director on some really big video games. And, you know, I've been involved with the resurgence of Marvel and done a lot of comic work and so on. I love it. The silly thing is, people that know me, again, know I'm not really likely to talk about myself too much. Much rather be at the back. But it's what I'm good at. I really, really, really love working with actors, and I think actors really enjoy working with me. We just did a live stream thing, or the AXACON thing that was, you know, where we got to sit up on stage and talk about our process. And I was very thrilled to sit with a bunch of the actors who were gushing about me, and I was also super embarrassed and tried to get them to stop talking about me. But they were very kind, and generally what they said was, you know, working with me is something that they relish, you know, they love it. They're very happy because I care about them very deeply. And the first thing I always say to actors is, I'm here to protect you. That's my job. My job is to protect the actors so that what we get on camera will be good, it will make them look good, it will be natural, and my job is to have an eye to see the things that might not look good, to catch them, to help them deliver their best performances. Because these performances that we talk about, people have to understand, it's not a performance if you go somewhere and you are just there. You know, in other words, don't act, be. If you can be that person in that environment with cameras clicking and stuff going on and people walking around in your peripheral vision, you stand the best chance for success. And so far with AXANAR, again, we've had these incredibly talented actors walk in, and they have just been these characters, and it's been amazing to watch.
Yeah, and by the way, I haven't asked you a lot about the directing process only because those AXACON panels that were done were just so good. And folks, if you haven't watched them yet, take the time. I'm going to include links on this blog because especially the producer-directors panel and the actors panel, there was just so much amazing insight into the whole process. So I didn't want to take too much time in this interview going over stuff that was, you know, discussed before in other places. But that being said, I wanted to ask you, as a director and somebody who's been directing for 20 years, what was your preparation going into the shoot? Because you did do a lot of very interesting things, like, for example, you know, pretending to be a certain kind of reporter when you were doing the green screen interviews with folks. A lot of people, you know, commented that you brought out better performances from them by deciding to either be a really, really annoying journalist, you know, versus being just a Russian drinking buddy. How did you prepare for that, or did you just do it right off the cuff?
Yeah, so a bit of both, actually. I love that question, by the way. That's a really cool question because it helps us to sort of understand what we do when we talk about it. So I pride myself on being super prepared to do my work. I love to work. I love to bring something. I had written everything out. We had a really fun script, but it didn't have context in it, Jonathan. So actually, I realized at some point, oh no, we don't have the leading questions that help the actor to respond. I'm not going to do that for them. And we saw that in all of the casting and rehearsals. We realized we hadn't given the right context for these people. I was just giving it on the cuff. So I wrote out a list of leading questions, and it would be, hey, you know, why did you do this, Commander Leonov? And then Leonov would answer. So we get on set, and there's some very challenging roles. You know, one of the roles that's super challenging was the role of Korax, because she is an alien person. And I cast Carrie-Anne Hunt in that role because I knew that Carrie-Anne would be able to bring the sense of otherness because she really likes doing fairy stuff, and she's really good at it. So we had her, you know, doing something that was difficult. We had a character who had PTSD, and the person who won the role blew us away. Just her performance in the casting was just incredible. And I had very personal relationships, as I always do, with all of those actors. Now, we get on set, and I realized during the first interview, because, you know, we don't quite know exactly how that will go, I realized that I am reading these questions in a certain demeanor to try to pull something out of the first subject. And so I began to say to the people, hey, imagine that I'm a very enthusiastic, like, you know, we have one character who's kind of a nerd. He's a starship engineer, designer kind of guy. And I said, I'll tell you what we're doing this like. I'm going to be kind of a nerd that really gets what you're doing, and we're both super enthusiastic about this thing, except that you are 12 times as intelligent as I am, so there's going to be moments where you realize I'm never going to get this. The actor loved this approach, and so we did it, and it really was effective. At a certain point, as you probably saw Jamie Rennell say, he was expecting me to be me, and I came on set, and I'm like, hey, Leonov, how are you doing? It's good to see you again. And we were both Russian, and we were both drinking buddies. And he said it was very jarring to him for a moment until he realized, hang on a minute, this is fun. Hey, what's up? Alexa, how you doing? And we jabbered on, and we had the most fun. And all I care about is what do we actually catch in camera. And what we catch is this incredibly natural speech. Now, when I spoke to Alec about what I wanted to look at from the first, prelude to AXANAR to now, I thought that one small thing that, it's all subjective, and I want to be super clear that, I'm so in love with what Kristen Gossett did and all the work that everybody worked on. But I felt that one small aspect of it was that it sometimes came across like an acted documentary because this is so challenging. So what we did was I wrote a series of improv questions as well, and I would walk on and say, hey, so tell me, how's the wife? And he would tell me about the wife. And then I would say, hey, are you still drinking at this place? And he would say, yeah, I've been there for a while. And then we would improv a little bit with each of these characters in different roles. So, sometimes I may come on and with Carrie Ann's character, Korax. I was an annoying reporter from a British tabloid that drove her crazy, but she couldn't show it. And so I would bug her for about 5 minutes, and she would very calmly put me down and say, I'm not answering that question. And that stuff that we got, the improv stuff, is equally magic. I'm not sure if half of that isn't going to end up in the film because it's so valuable. It's just really natural conversations with these characters. And then we get to this one character, Kessel, who was written specifically for a new thing that I brought. And, man, that was a closed set. I mean, the preparation was that I went to the green room with Ashley, the actor, and we got together and we talked about PTSD, and I told her about my family. And I talked to her a little bit about what it meant for me to do this character. My best friend, Brian, is a triple amputee. He got his legs blown off in Iraq and one of his arms, and he's a wonderful guy. He's like my little brother from another mother. And we've always been super friends, and I showed her a goodwill message from Brian. He said, hi, Ashley, it's Brian. I'm so glad you're bringing this character, and I'm so proud of you. And she bawled her eyes out. I'm horribly manipulative, perhaps, but she was there. Well, I have to be, right? And so getting that message from Brian, knowing that she had spoken to me about my family's sacrifice in various wars, bringing it to a personal level, and then you get this magic 10 minutes, and you bring her out, and we sit her in the chair, and we go, okay, so how you doing? All right, let's talk. And we talk a little bit about what's going on, and then we get her, and we try to keep her in the moment. And all I can say is we close the set, we take everybody out of her eye line, so that no one's moving in her peripheral vision. It's just me and her on a set, and I'm her friend and confidant, but, it's hard for her to talk about. But she wants to talk about the Battle of AXANAR because of people she lost. And for that magic 10 minutes or so, the set was completely silent. The people on the other side, looking at the monitors and so on, I'm told at least 3 of them were crying because of how powerful it was. And that's what I think preparation can bring to a film, to a role, to a project. My preparation is to do whatever we can do to make those people be real.
I'm so excited when I hear you talking about all that, to see all this when it finally comes together. One of the things that I'm beginning to understand now that, I'm an executive producer and I'm watching, directors direct is, how delicate and how complicated a process it is to direct an actor. Vance Major, I interviewed him very recently. He makes his fan films on his cell phone. And he was saying, he doesn't really work with actors. He works with his friends. And he just says, I'll just tell them exactly how I want them to say the line. And then they just say it the way I say it, and it's exactly the way I want it. And I think a lot of people think of directing as, just tell them how you want to say the line. They'll say the line. You'll get it the way you want it, and you put it in, and that's fine. And no, it's actually just the opposite of that. The last thing a director should do, and I was told this by Victoria, is to go up to an actor and say, this is the way I want you to deliver the line, because what ultimately happens is you end up getting a photocopy of the director's performance. And if the director really wants to act, the director should be acting.
Yeah.
What you want is the actor to be in the moment and not to be in their head. And the problem is the more you direct an actor, the more you risk getting them in their head. But if you don't direct the actor, they don't necessarily know the direction they're going. So there's this interesting balancing act, and I'm just beginning to discover how much of that iceberg I never see when it comes down to getting these amazing performances that we see in Hollywood and that, hopefully we're going to see in AXANAR and Interlude. So do you want to talk a little bit about how does a director tell the actor what they want without necessarily telling the actor what they want?
Yeah, it's a great question again, right? And so that's one. I'm
full of great questions today.
It's one of my favorite things to talk about, right? Listen, there are things that I need. So let me just go to voice acting for a moment. People may know that I voice direct as well. So good friends of mine, Yuri Lowenthal and Tara Platt, are two of the sort of preeminent voice actors in the business. They're husband and wife. They're amazing people. They're the best human beings and the best voice actors. They really are. They have a book called Voiceover Voice Actor, which I know intimately because I was so thrilled when they asked me to write the foreword for it. And a lot of what we talked about, I care about sound very much. I'm driving Mark Edward Lewis crazy because I've got all these ideas about music and sound. And he's obviously pretty accomplished in that. And so we're having fun with it. And so I feel as though I have a very personal connection to anything that I make. And I have really, really strong ideas. But one thing that actors who work with me know is that I'll go back to voice acting for a moment. I will never, ever feed them a line. I can't do it. It worries me. It makes me upset, the idea that I might potentially feed an actor a line. But there are sometimes you need an inflection, a vocal inflection. And so you would say, hey, I wonder if you could consider giving this as if you're a trucker and you're about to crash your truck. And we tried that. And then they don't give the inflection I need. And in the end, as a last resort, I will ask their permission. Hey, I'm sure that you understand. I'm not getting what I think we need. Can I give you a read, just a vocal inflection that I'm looking for? And they will say, thank you so much for asking. Please, by all means, give us a vocal inflection. I give them the vocal inflection. They're like, got it. I see. Yeah, no problem. But they so appreciate the fact that I've asked them to do it their way and given it their best performance and the things. And so now it's just me asking permission because I'm very, very careful about not stepping on them. At the same time, there are some things that I need. I need this character to be this person. I think I want to redirect. And so a lot of this comes with redirecting actors, giving them some additional information, not saying do it like this, but I think in this particular instance, it would be great if the character was angry about just having lost $50. That's a great way of playing it. Can we kind of bring that into it? Actors, I believe, very much appreciate that. So I'm going to take you right back to the very beginning. Here's a script. It has words in it. Those words are intended to be delivered a certain way. I'm writing on AXANAR, so I have a very strong idea of how these characters are speaking. We come in, we bring in an actor, various people read for the part, and at a certain point, we're going to cast an actor because I believe that the person reading this series of written words is probably going to deliver them in the way that we like and is going to work with me very well, and I will give redirects during the audition so that we can... It's all about the redirecting of the actor and the personal relationship I have with the actor. So now we've got it cast. Well, I believe it's Scorsese who says that casting is 90% of directing. I'm not sure 90% because of The Sleepless Night, but I will certainly say it's a massive and significant part of it. Now we bring that person in, and now I work with them in advance, and I give a lot of my time to the actors. Ask me any question you have. Tell me what you need. What questions do you have? What do you think? Is there something else you want to bring to this role? And we work it out. We go through that process leading up to production. The day of production, they are brought in. I spend time with them backstage when they're in makeup and hair and all that kind of stuff. We chat through what we're going to do. We get ready to go. They come out. I'm not sure they could be any more prepped, and I could be any more prepped. And at that point, we go, and we're moving. We see what we got. And sometimes it works, and great. In Carrie Ann's case, Carrie Ann Hunt, who plays Korak, she was almost mildly annoyed with me because we filmed one take, and I said, no, good, we're good. And she was like, no, I've got to do two of them at least. I said, no, you don't. We're good. Okay, fine, we'll do it. So we did another take. It was fine. We didn't get anything different from what we needed anyway, and I was very happy with that. Sometimes it's a struggle. Like I said earlier on, there was another actor that had a bit of a rough time. It was just a struggle. And that was more due to unforeseen circumstances. So from the very beginning where the word goes on, Jonathan, to what we get in camera, it's a big process. But it is the most fun, amazing, vibrant, collaborative process in all of entertainment.
It's an amazing process. Now that I've been on set and I've seen it, it's just indescribable. And I'm so glad that I decided to explore this aspect of fan filmmaking as opposed to just, reporting on it. And I actually had the opportunity, even though I wasn't at the AXANAR shoot, to watch you direct. Because folks may not know this, but during our shoot on Sunday, Paul came by. He just, wanted to see what was going on. He didn't want to interfere with anything. He was very respectful to Victoria and Josh and let them know that he was just, sort of here as a peeping Tom and nothing else. And they were very happy to have him. In fact, they ended up both chatting with him a bit that day. And did Victoria ask you, or did you offer to do your little mentoring session of the actors on how to handle a torpedo hit to the bridge, that physical acting?
So I wasn't necessarily directing. I was actually sort of...
Yeah, I want to apologize right now. You weren't directing on our shoot. Victoria was directing. And I guess the best word I could say is advising and choreographing. Choreographing is probably a much better term.
That's what I said. Yeah, that was a physical acting thing. So it wasn't something I was super familiar with. So part of what we do is preparation, right? So I had to research and find out how things got shot. And one of them I was very worried about was, the visual shots of, like, how would we get people getting hit by a photon torpedo. Remember, not everyone is a trained actor. Some people are, and so we have some people that are struggling a little bit, to get it right. And so I prepped it. I was ready for when we did AXANAR, and I could see what was wrong in camera once we started. So people were moving sort of up top, and they were bobbing their heads and going in different directions. And so I was able to see in camera how to actually do that properly. And one of the ways to do it properly was to get people to wobble from kind of their hips. You do it from below, from the center. The ship is wobbling. It's going through turbulence. It might be getting hit. And then what you do is you throw your hips to one side. This is what looks good in camera. And then you throw the rest of your body that way. But if you just throw your head to one side or something, it just looks awful. It looks unnatural.
Well, now, how did you know that, though? How did you know that the hips have to move first?
I worked it out. I decided that I'm going to do this until I get it right. So I did it in camera.
Okay, so you just kept watching people like, okay, move a little lower center of gravity until they looked okay.
Yeah, it was just an insight that I found as I worked. I kept going, no, that's not looking right. Hang on a minute, let's try this. So where's it coming from? No, that's the wrong play. Hey, you know what? Why don't we do it from the bottom of the hips? Okay, cool. So we did that, and it was very effective. And so I explained to Victoria, and I want to be really clear, Victoria and Josh were doing an amazing job. But I'd offered up, hey, Victoria, I just want to let you know, I've been through this whole how to get people to work, so I don't want you to waste any time. I'm sure you would rather not waste any time. Would you like me to kind of just help you, choreograph for a moment, just to show you what I learned doing AXANAR? So it was simply that. It was literally, when we did AXANAR, it took me 20 minutes. I'm sure you'd appreciate if it just got you quicker to the goal if you did it sort of over 5. And she was very happy for me to just explain it. Hey, this is what you do. So when it hits, you kind of throw your hips like this and throw your body. And I think it just got Victoria and Josh a little quicker to what they would have been doing anyway, and it was helpful to get an insight.
And it was so valuable for us because once all the actors on the bridge had been advised, and I guess you took like maybe 3 or 4 minutes to show everybody, and then we all sort of practiced together. I was just watching, videotaping it. But it was so realistic after all of that. And I really appreciated you offering to help, and I think, so did Victoria and Josh. But once again, the idea that directing has so many elements to it, and you just talked about voice, and we talked before about, emotion, getting yourself into the right mental state, and then there's physical acting. And, Victoria later on had a really great moment. I don't know if you were there for it, when our helmsman, the pilot of the Ares, was doing this, the camera was focused more on him with Garth in the background. And, he was delivering a line while being at the console. I think a less experienced director or less detail-oriented director would just have said, fine, he got the line right, that's great. But what Victoria was doing was she was looking at where his arms were going and where his eyes were going, where his hands were going. And one of the things was he was really kind of looking down a lot while he was delivering the line, because he's pressing all these buttons. He wants to, make sure he's pressing the right buttons. And, once again, not telling him this is what you need to do, but to get him into the right state, saying, when you drive, do you look at the steering wheel?
Right.
And it was such a brilliant thing to say. And she told me later she just said it in the moment. She didn't think it was brilliant. She just, it was just one of the things she said. But I think a lot of people there as well is like, that's so brilliant, because it just tells the actor, yeah, you don't need to look at the controls, because you have been piloting the Starship now for years. And these controls are, like your steering wheel. Do you look at the steering wheel when you drive? No, you don't. And after that moment, everything just fell into place. And it's just this wonderful sequence where he delivers the line. He's looking down. He's looking up. He's not really paying attention to what he's doing with his hands. And at the same point in time, you know that he knows exactly what he's doing.
I love it, because I love hearing how other directors do things. I love hearing those little successes. Victoria's right. Like, there are times when you get something you didn't really plan on saying this, but you're supposed to know how to do those things. You have a million things to look at. We just did this thing last Sunday. We were shooting a certain thing, and there was a line that someone was delivering to a speaker. They're speaking to a speaker that's sort of like delivering information to them. And the actor was looking across the other side of the room at the person actually reading those lines aloud. And I kept saying, nope, wait a minute, hang on. I realize we're making a mistake here. You are talking, you're throwing your energy in the direction of someone off camera. You've got to throw your energy right there. It's that speaker you're talking to. And we have to redirect, otherwise it would never look good. And so as a director, we have to be diligent. We have to make sure we're not making mistakes. We have to motivate people. There's 1,000 things that you have to do. And if you need me to explain them while I'm directing, I'm just not going to be able to direct. I can't explain it to you. Leave me alone. Let me do it, right? Trust me. Trust me, I got this, is a big thing for directors. And then, a portion of this is just, yeah, trust me, I've got this. But, there are certain things that people want of directors, like they want some, a producer may well go to a director and say, I need this, please. And, that's about the producer-director relationship.
Yeah, I'm learning about the producer-director relationship myself. And also the director of photography, cinematographer, whatever, relationship, because that was another dynamic was interesting for me to watch on Interlude, was that, while Victoria was doing a lot to direct the actors, Josh was working a lot with the lighting and the camera. How much were you worrying about the technical side of framing the shots and lighting the shots, or was that just something you handed off to somebody else where you were really concentrating on getting the best performances?
So lighting, not as much. I mean, of course I'm in there, but Jim McKinney, our DP, was amazing. Framing and camera movement, absolutely, because the way a camera moves and the way it's framed is super. It's literally one of the biggest storytelling tools that we have. So the best way to explain it is this. Grab your iPhone, shoot someone walking. You can stand there and they can walk towards you. You can walk towards them as they walk towards you, and it's a completely different story. You can move away from them as they walk towards you, and that's a different story. And you can basically shoot someone walking 150 times, 150 different ways, and I could probably do it about 600 different ways. Tracking their feet, following them, panning, all of them tell a different story. So you have to understand what your camera is going to do, and that comes from the way that thing is storyboarded, it comes from any number of things. So I very much care about what kind of camera movement there is. As far as lighting goes, I trust my DP, and I have certain ideas, and I want to make sure it's consistent. That's kind of how I work. different people have different approaches.
Is there anything else on the set that you, as the director, are directly overseeing, or is most of it just handled by other people who have their own special talents for things?
That's a 50-50 question. Yes, there are lots of other things I'm handling. Sometimes it's just like relationships. And, I want my set to be a very positive place, for example, because I believe that people will do much better work when they feel empowered and they feel enabled to do their actual job that they're being paid for. I'm super collaborative, and then I have elements of things that I'm not really needing to collaborate on. So, well, I got it. Thanks very much, right? So my primary relationship on set is with my producer, Scott Conley. That's like what Meta brings to this, like our relationship and our years of experience. And our ability to work together is something that will really make a difference to the production. But my ability I've never worked with Jim McKinney before, so my ability to work with him, go through the boards, go through the shots, talk about lighting, go on a pass. I did all the work that I'm required to do with the director of photography, and so we finished, and I said, Jim, you did an amazing job. He's like, we should work together again. We did fine. Thanks very much. The other person who I know people will be somewhat familiar with, our AD, Jenna Cannell, is incredible, right? So Jenna is an actress. She's a great AD. We got onto the set, and I think on the first day, Alec wanted to get the troops together. I may or may not have told this anecdote before, but we'll try again. We get the troops together, and Alec wants to tell everybody, okay, everyone, welcome to AXANAR, and he does his sort of 10 minutes, and he says, now I'm going to bring the director up to have his 10 minutes of fame, and I stood up and I said, let's just make it easy. Alec is lunatic. I'm the voice of reason. However, Jenna over there, she's the voice of God. Right? So please. Pay attention. I didn't really have that much to say, like Alec had already said it, but it was funny because we sort of like made fun of Alec and said Alec's a nutcase, and then sort of said, look, Jenna is how this thing works. So I absolutely rely at every moment on Jenna to communicate with her, to understand how we're doing a shot. Are we ready? Are we doing it a certain way? We try not to. We didn't trip on each other at all. She's amazing to work with. And then one other person I would single out, Alicia Muller. We had brought in, she was the script supervisor, and she was incredible. She was so good. She had every potential mistake that I make. I might make a mistake. I might get this wrong. I may not realize that we're not matching to a previous shot. She already had it before I needed it, and she would just call me over and say, hey, look, last time we had this there. You need to just go move it back. So having someone that can help you not make mistakes in continuity is really, really cool, and Alicia could not have been better. She's like an A++.
Let me ask before we move on from the last two folks that you were talking about, the people listening to this interview may not know what an AD, an assistant director, does on a set, aside from being the voice of God, or what a script supervisor does. Could you give just a quick little overview of what those two people were responsible for and why the performances were so good in those roles?
Yeah, I'll try to make it quick. So the assistant director is truly the assistant director, and we work hand in hand. Jenna does the scheduling. Jenna does the set operations to some extent. She will basically call out to the camera operator, are you ready? Are you speeding? You got stuff going on? All right, sound, are you rolling? Okay, great. So we're ready to go. Hey, let's get this in, last looks or something for makeup. Okay, you ready? Cool, we're getting going. Okay, and one of the things I don't do is I don't really call action. I've got other things to think about. So when I give Jenna the nod or the assent, she goes, okay, and action. And then I will call cut because I'm going to go until I need something to be cut, right? There's a protocol interaction between her, but there's all kinds of things like scheduling the day, making sure that this is happening, making sure that we're ahead of the game. Being on time is one thing. The AD has to get us on track. And so Jenna will come to me and say, you've got 5 minutes to get this unless you want to be behind. Okay, great. Thanks, Jenna. She and I would have this great relationship where she told me, I think, the first time, and then I made it within 5 minutes. And the next time she said it, I said, do I actually have 10 minutes or do I have a little more? And she said, well, actually, you have a little more. And I said, okay, tell me what I actually have because you can trust me at this point. Of course I'm on time, right?
So she's basically Riker and you're Picard in this case.
That's right. That is right. And so the basics, scripty, again, is a pretty complicated job, but the basics of what Alicia's job is continuity. And so what we are getting out of her, she's watching off to one side, and she has basically every take listed. So if it says scene 1, take 1, she writes down scene 1, take 1, and we may be doing what's called a series. Let's do that take 3 times without cutting. Okay, fine. So we have one character say one thing. Okay, and go back to 1, which is position 1, and they do it again, and they roll through again. And what I may say to Alicia is, yeah, I like that one. That's a really good take right there. But that's not all she does. She also makes sure that we don't make mistakes, that the hair isn't, I mean, what if your hair is parted on the wrong side? At a certain point, you're going to really get into a problem. I think I can point to, like, the movie Hitman. There's actually a really funny continuity mistake in Hitman where the woman has a butterfly on her cheek, and then for one scene, it's on the other cheek. It's a tattoo, so that doesn't seem likely. And I'm like, damn, shouldn't have made that mistake. So Alicia basically saves my bacon all the time. She was incredibly diligent, and she didn't miss a single thing. And some of those things, if they had been missed, they would just be problematic. It's almost like we can't use that because we made a mistake. So she's indispensable to the production.
Is there anybody else from the production that you want to call out in terms of just being somebody who did a really above-the-top job?
Well, I called those people out because those are the people I interact with most, and Jim McKinney would be the director of photography, and obviously I interact with him the most. I call out the actors because I directly work with the actors. No, only because I couldn't possibly single out anybody. I think everybody was amazing on the shoot and has been so consistently. And actually, I suppose the people I would call out would be the volunteers. They're wonderful. They were really nice people. They clearly loved Star Trek a ton. And here they are volunteering their time and just loving it and being involved. And you just would say to them, look, guys, thank you so much for doing this. This is really fun. There's one person I think actually would be nice to call out. There was a young guy called Stephen Shuey who is on the autism spectrum, and they talk about it quite often. And Stephen is this big, cuddly, friendly dude. He's the nicest person.
He's like a tardigrade with fewer arms.
Oh, he's so sweet, and he is so positive, and he actually has a bit of knowledge about Star Trek. And so he and his mum came up, and his mum was doing costuming, and she was so lovely, and Stephen was so pleasant. Like, everybody adored Stephen, and he got put in charge of whether or not the costumes are actually correct in terms of Star Trek lore, and he was so proud of having this job. He and I actually share something that I think is quite interesting. We both can see color in music. It's something that most people can't do or don't see. So I had a long conversation with him about, oh, this one's orange, right? And he sees it. He's better than I do, or clearer than I do. So I would definitely call him out because I think if anybody listening would want to work out, like, why? What's the point of AXANAR? Me especially, right? I learned from Stephen and his mum. I learned a ton from watching them. This is why. These people are gorgeous. They're the sweetest, nicest people. They love AXANAR. They love Star Trek. They love fandom. This is who we do this for. Incredible experience for me to spend time around Stephen, who could not be more positive if he tried.
I have to second that. Stephen and his mom came for the interlude shoot as well. And in this case, they wanted to volunteer again, but they couldn't afford a second trip. They had to come up from Tampa, and it's like an 11-hour drive, and they needed, hotel paid for and gas paid for and food along the way. And I was only too happy to do that because I would rather have a person who was already familiar with the costumes be our seamstress than to just go to somebody, local in Lawrenceville and say, here's the costumes, have them ready by Saturday. And thank God we didn't go that way because we had Karen in for the first 2 days. She was already ready going in. She had everybody's measurements, and then she was still working all day Saturday and most of the day Sunday, adjusting all of these uniforms. She was just amazing, and Stephen as well. I agree with you. He was so upbeat. Interlude doesn't have a lot of named characters. Basically, we have, Garth and we have Chakande, and that's basically it. And he came up with a name and a backstory for pretty much everybody on the Artemis Bridge, even though all these characters are getting killed. So they now all have names and they all have backstories, and God bless you, Stephen. And at one point, Stephen said, is there a chance that I could be on the bridge? And Steve's a big guy. He's got a little bit of a gut, but the fact is he was able to hold it in and just, he just kind of looks like, big wrestler, big teddy bear tardigrade kind of guy. But, he was so warm. He was so positive. Like, the thing about fan films, it's still a fan film. And, I wanted to have very in-shape actors on my bridge, but there's a lot of ways you can film somebody and not necessarily see, too much of their stomach. And I said, sure. And Stephen's face lit up. It was like every Christmas morning that had ever happened for this guy, all rolled into one smile. And that moment for me was just like, yeah, this is what fan films are about. And, what Star Trek is about. And, he was so excited to be able to, and wear a red shirt. That was even better. He was so excited to be a red shirt because he was sitting in the engineering console. People are excited to be a red shirt, but he just loved that. And his mom perfectly tailored a very large uniform for him, and everything was just perfect. And Karen, what can I say about her? She should have gotten paid thousands of dollars for what she did.
Yeah,
and she got
great.
nothing.
Yes.
And at the end, I was giving her money to basically get her home. And I gave her an extra $25. I mean, we didn't have a lot left over in our budget. I didn't want to, give her hundreds and hundreds of dollars because we didn't really have it. But I said, look, if I can just give you a little bit extra, here's an extra $25. And she looked at me and she said, oh, thank you so much. And she looked at Steve and she said, okay, on the way home, we're going to be able to go someplace nice. We're going to be able to go to Denny's.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, man, now I wanted to give her like $100 because somebody's really, really nice. But for them, Denny's was nice. And after the shoot, almost everybody who volunteered, and a lot of your volunteers became my volunteers, by the way, because a lot of them were local and they'd already done it and they wanted to do it again. And so many people IM'd me and emailed me afterwards, thank you for letting me come to Interlude and letting me help. And I'm like thinking, why are you thanking me?
Yeah.
I mean, these guys did amazing things. And, they drove to pick up things when we needed them so I didn't have to leave the set. They got the chairs and the tables, and then they dropped them back off again at the rental place, and they got tablecloths, and they, we ran out of something, and they went out and they got it. And at one point I just gave somebody my credit card with a list. I was just trusting a total stranger with my credit card. They came back with receipts, and boom, we're done. It was such an amazing experience, and I cannot say enough about the volunteers. So I know exactly what you're saying as well. They're incredible people.
Yeah, and I would say probably that speaks to one of the first things that we talked about on this conversation, which is, look, I think if anyone's worried and they're getting frustrated and tired and annoyed, and I get it, I can sort of see why people are frustrated, or there was all this problem with CBS and the big lawsuit and all the things that have happened. And the angry interactions online and the things that seem to snowball. I would probably remind everybody, don't look at someone else and say what it's there for. Instead, I would remind everybody, you know what this is about? This is about a guy like Stephen, right? Stephen's cool, and Stephen's really kind and he loves Star Trek so much. Think for a minute, take a breath, right, and think about that guy. What a kind person. And that love for Star Trek and other people and the fandom and all of those things is exactly what Roddenberry would have wanted. Now, don't take that and say, I would be like that if someone else wasn't like this. It's all on us, right? And so I think we should all look at this and say, hey, like Meta Studios and my company and me personally, I want to make this film so that people like Stephen, who I've never met and I won't meet, have a chance, not just like Stephen in terms of whether or not they're on the spectrum, I just mean like fans of that. I would love for everybody to get the joy out of AXANAR that is intended. And so knowing that a guy like Stephen has so much joy out of it, I can extrapolate and say there are thousands of people who I'll never meet who will get similar joy. So let's all band together, let's join in together and try to make this great project.
Well, if that isn't a perfect ending to an interview, I don't know what is. Well, Paul, thank you for taking the time to talk to us about AXANAR. Obviously, a lot of us out there cannot wait to see it finished. Wish you all the best.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And I'm guessing we'll chat again before too long because I'm sure there will be some more AXANAR news coming up before we know it, right?
Yeah, we're basically going to work really hard on getting the next couple of shoots in, and I think the next time you and I talk, we'll probably have gone through some of those shoots and now be in post, hopefully, and really have some content to show, trailers and content and all those kind of things. So let's see.
It's a date, my friend. It's a date.
All right, man. Can't wait. Thank you.